never cared and that she never will. Do it all again, I guess I'll have to wait until then. If I get drunk, well, I'll pass out on the floor now, baby. You won't bother me no more. And if you're drinking, well, you know that you're my friend, and I'll say, I think I'll have myself a beer. She called me late last night, say she loved me so, but I guess she changed her mind. Well, I should have known it wouldn't be alright, but I can't live without her, so I won't even try. If I get drunk, well, I'll pass out on the floor now, baby. You won't bother me no more. And if you're drinking, well, you know that you're my friend, and I'll say, I think I'll have myself a beer. Maybe someday I'll think of what to say. Maybe next time I'll remember what to do. She looks like heaven. Maybe this is hell. She said she'd do it all again. She promised not to tell. If I get drunk, well, I'll pass out on the floor now, baby. You won't bother me no more. She said, but it's okay, boy, 'cause you know we'll be good friends, and I'll say, I think I'll have myself a beer. I think I'll have myself
our virtual meeting because of the lovely COVID pandemic. So, but actually, we have a really good turnout on the Zoom call, which is great. I think this is actually almost more people that came to our November meeting. We want to know what you're drinking. Please let us know in chats and comments so we can give you a shout out. And then we have some upcoming events such as they are. We're going to have a virtual happy hour in February and probably a virtual meeting. And then we'll see what March brings. Then we have Parkville. Yay, Parkville is back. And there's the details about Parkville. Who's organizing that again?
That would be me.
Jake is working on that. So if you want to donate or sign up to help talk to Jake.
The sign up is live for that.
And it looks like there is an update. Pints for Pets has moved back a week. It is now the last weekend in May. On the 28th. Not the 21st. Okay. We will fix that. Oh yeah, we hope to have some collaborations with local breweries this year and a winery, which would be fun. So those are the breweries that we have planned. We got Free State and Yankee Tank and Irvine Winery, which I think is new. I'll have to do some research on that one. And then Service Brewing and hopefully Fields and Ivy. So that would be really cool to have a lot of group participation on that this year, since we haven't been able to do much of this last year and the year before. So next, we got a super awesome donation from Free State. We got a crap ton of grain that people can get portions of for their projects or brewing, whatever that's called. For your brew day, you want to do something interesting? We got some malt for you. Who do people contact for that?
So what we're gonna do, I haven't picked it up yet. What I'd like to do is set aside some of this for some projects. So what we want is to do some more club brews for tastings. This would be great for that. Um, Josh has expressed some interest in getting the club barrel program going again. I think that would be a good use for this malt, and for an exciting project in itself. So we'll set some of this aside for that, and then I'll post something on the forums about what's left. People can sign up to get like a bag or something. And I'll probably do some splits. Like I'm sure nobody wants a whole 50-pound bag of dextrin malt, and who knows, maybe. But we'll do some splits and we'll see how it goes.
Cool. That sounds like it will be super useful and we can do projects with it. Yay. What is a NWPA? I don't know that one. Anyway, we also have this really cool new agreement with the Lawrence Brew Shop on Mass Street. They have agreed to help out with people with a club membership if they purchase $150 or more in product, and you could potentially be featured in a beer kit that they would then be selling in the shop. So that's really fun and new for us to do, and would be some really great exposure for people's recipes that they really like.
So
Okay.
how do they, not to interrupt, how do they sign up for that? Or is that Jake? Do you know that? Or
So what they're doing right now is so they've only done one. So some of you may know Bill Perkins. He's a member. He's working at the shop now. So they just posted on Facebook his recipe. It said it was a Irish red, but that was actually an Irish stout recipe. They're going to fix that. The Going forward, they want to do one a month. And so, I've been talking with them about doing some, special ones with the club. And if anybody has like a really solid recipe that they think would work well for this, let me know, and or pop into to the shop and talk to them about it. But they kind of want to do seasonal stuff. So obviously getting ready for St. Patrick's Day, they might want to do some Irish beers and stuff like that.
Cool. That sounds like a really great connection and opportunity. Next, we got some pictures from the holiday party for people to admire. We had a pretty decent beer exchange and raffle giveaways. And despite the circumstances, a decent turnout. So that was really nice to actually hang out and see some people in person. So next we have the officers. This is the lineup for the new officer ballot. I sent an email to hopefully everyone who is a paid member for their opinion. And so we have a vote of 35 approvals. Can't really see the number, it's super tiny, but we have 35. So out of 50 or 60 paid members. So we're going to call that good. Unless anyone, yeah, we're going to call that good. And so now Jake will have his last treasurer report.
Okay, thanks, Lynette. And thank you very much for being president for us last year. Really appreciate everything you've done for the Guild. So,
Hey, let's all unmute and do a clap.
Don't.
Bravo, bravo, bravo.
Excellent.
Y'all are silly.
Clap for Lynette.
Okay, so I'll run through my last treasurer report. So the last one for the year covers the previous year's finances, but as always, we want to cover memberships. So if you are not paid up yet, PayPal's the easiest way to do it. Just remember to send as friends and family. That saves the fee, so that we don't lose that small percentage of cash. So we are already at 7 paid members. Actually, I think that's gone up just while I was sitting here. So we're probably around 10 already, which is great. I think this meeting last year, I think we had 3. So it's a great start. February is when memberships expire, so don't forget that. And we do have a large number of events coming up this year that require you to be a paid member, like Parkville. Don't forget, if you want to sign up for Parkville, you got to be a paid member. You want part of the grain splits from the donation, which was very generous from Jeff with Free State. If you want in on that, pay your dues. It's $25 for individual, $35 for family. One thing that we might consider next year is upping our dues. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that. Just cost of everything is going up, but that'll be something that we'll put out to the club level before we make any decisions, and we'll talk about it. So. Okay, so next slide is talking about, actually go ahead and take us to the next one. So this is the 2021 financial review, and I've got 2020 on here to compare with. You can see this was a big change for us, and what drove this was really hosting Brewfest. That was that's a huge event for the club, and this year in particular, we did a great job with managing expenses. And I'll take the opportunity again, because this did make such good money for the club. Just want to recognize some of the folks that helped out. All of our committee heads did a great job. Everyone who sold a bunch of tickets also really drove, that to be a really great event. So you can see we are in a great position for this coming year, and I think we'll be able to utilize this in a number of ways. I think that reinvesting this in Brewfest could be a great way to do it. But again, tell us what you guys want to do, and we can come up with some ways to make that happen. So, and then if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see the breakdown. Like I said, obviously Brewfest is the big moneymaker, also the biggest expense. And then we spend a fair amount on the holiday party. That's the green part of the donut there. That's a big portion. We did have to spend a decent amount on equipment. We had to, Frank did a lot of work for us cleaning up jockey boxes and replacing stuff. I did a little work on the jockey box cover, gave it a new coat of paint. So, we made some improvements. So we actually reinvested some of that money already, and still in a good spot. So, okay, so let's see what the trend looks like over 21 compared to 20 and 19. 2020 was really a different year, obviously, for obvious reasons, but you can kind of see how that compares to 2019. So it's somewhat similar, and I think that is about it.
Is 2020 the 2021 the green?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And this is where we're at for all of our accounts. Like I said, we're in a good spot. We are we're set for this year. So I look forward to doing some events. One of the things that I really liked about the collaborations was it was a good way to get folks involved, and potentially reward folks for being active. So that was one of the things that we wanted to do with these collaborations is choose members that have been really active in the club. They're brewing all the time. And so that's what we're going to do with those. And it's also, you can do those in small groups. These days, getting together in big groups is a little bit tougher. We never know when we're going to have to go back to virtual meetings, things like that. So we will probably look at events that kind of focus on that. Obviously, Brewfest is a big outdoor event. Hopefully by then we're in a different we're in a different sort of setting. So yeah, that's it for me. I'm going to hand it off to Ryan for the next meeting.
Let's unmute for Jake.
Thank you, guys.
Wow. Thanks for taking care of that for the last couple of years, Jake. It's not always easy. So on to the library report. That is an old picture, but Tara, do you have anything new?
Tara is temporarily unavailable, so I will speak on her behalf.
Hello.
Due to the fake reopening of our economy, the library is currently residing in the church basement in jail.
Oh no.
So
We'll have to get that out.
until something happens and we can get back to the church again, the library is kind of in jail.
Okay. Well, we'll get that sorted so that people have access to it. Next is
Would that be purgatory?
purgatory. Yes, we'll bring it back to purgatory. Or limbo. Limbo would be better.
Yeah, but purgatory for the church theme thing.
Yeah, mine's better. All right, so update of what's on the forums. Brewfest is September 24. So save that date. And if you have any ideas for similar topics, there is a thread to post those for people to review. And then we have our guest speaker, which Josh is going to introduce.
Yeah, with that, I'd like to welcome Dan Chavetta, brewmaster of Fields and Ivy, to talk to us a little bit, I think, about barrel aging and his experience with that. So Dan, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I gotta figure out how to set this up.
We believe in you. You can do it. So, people drinking things. We have several comments about that. Someone has a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. There's a Red Chair Northwest Pale Ale. Someone has a Schwarz beer from Casey Beer. A little jealous about that. I want to try it. And we have a Service Brewing Salted Caramel Eggnog Cream Ale. What does that taste like? Because we were having this discussion earlier about eggnog and beer. Come back. Let us know what it tastes like. And we got a
Looks like Alex may have had a Modelo there. Is that what I saw?
nice.
Dragon's milk.
Oh yeah, I'm rocking that Modelo Life right now.
We got a saison dry hopped with hibiscus. That sounds fun. And soup. We also have a soup eating thing going on. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh wait, can you see the wood and beer?
Oh yeah, that's great.
Oh no, wait, hold on. Oh, it's that way.
Yeah, right there. There you go.
Apparently it says this is beta, so I wasn't quite sure that it was gonna work, but that's pretty fancy. Okay, cool. Okay, well, neat. Okay. Yep. Okay, so more or less this is just going to be kind of based on my experience. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, but that's what I've done. I have done this at Boulevard and then also at Fields and Ivy. So that's kind of the breadth of my experience. We at Boulevard, I did produce beer for Firestone Walker. So I have their knowledge, or at least how they do it, as part of my background too. So as far as like resources that we use, I use is this book. I don't know if you guys have this in the library, but you should. It's fantastic. It's a little bit more technical than not. It doesn't even really have any like kind of like how-tos, but like the science behind it and all that stuff, how to work with barrels and what you can expect to get out of them, that kind of a thing. And then other brewers. The industry is pretty collaborative, so it's pretty easy to just call up your friends that do barrel aging and ask them for tips and tricks and what worked for you and that kind of stuff. As far as recipe development, when you're going to barrel age something, you're going to well, I mean, this is something more for me than not necessarily for you guys, but the beer is going to have to sell once it's gone in a barrel. And while something might work and sound really cool, if the market doesn't want it or care for it or really know that it exists, then they're not really going to, then it's not going to really work out for you. That's why that's there. Not necessarily for homebrewers, but it's something that I think about. The other part is some stuff doesn't work some styles don't work in barrels unless you have a fermentation aspect with it. Mostly what I mean by that is sour stuff. Otherwise, aging in wood and in barrels doesn't really make sense for a lot of styles. It just doesn't translate well, doesn't add flavors that are appropriate, that kind of stuff. Time spent in wood will dictate recipe development. And what I mean by that is, like if you expect something to sit in a barrel for 6 months, you want to hop it in a way that after 6 months, it'll have appropriate bitterness. So if you're, you might shoot for 30 IBUs, but after 6 months in wood, it's going to have the effective IBU of something a lot lower. So it'll start higher, that kind of thing. Flavors kind of do the same sort of stuff too, as well. So be really aggressive with your malts, knowing that some of the more nuanced flavors are going to fall out. And if you want those around, bump those up. Flavors need to be assertive to work on the wood. So, blonde ale, even if it's a big, gigantic blonde ale, it's not going to work really great in wood. It can, if you do it right, but more often than not, that's like fresh virgin oak that, and maybe you're sitting in a barrel for a week at most. But for the most part, yeah, I've put saisons into bourbon barrels, and doesn't come out well. It's no good. That kind of thing. Anybody have any questions? I do real well with questions because I don't think of everything, and sometimes people think of things that I'm not. Okay.
If you have a question, go ahead and unmute and ask that.
Yeah, blurt it out.
In an orderly fashion, please.
I have a question.
Go for it.
One of the things that I'm thinking about doing barrel wise in the near future would be a saison in a gin barrel. Trying to get those botanicals from the barrel. And I mean, obviously, if it's a really fresh dump, that would be good. That's ideal. I expect to pick up some bugs with the saison. I'm going to pitch some bugs with it anyway. But have you done anything with botanicals in a barrel? Have you used a gin barrel at all? Have you
I
put
have.
botanicals in the barrel with it, or would you do that post? Or
I'm a big fan of doing barrel aging being a kind of a separate process from other additions. Now, I have done stuff like vanilla beans right into a barrel, but that's kind of a little bit different. But getting things in a bung and then using your racking cane to get the beer out, man, if it's not bagged, it's going to be kind of a hassle. It can be a hassle. So that's why I don't. I usually have it get pumped into a small tank and deal with it in there. I have not directly done anything with a gin barrel, so I can't really talk about like saison in a gin barrel. I've heard that it's real hit or miss, and it really depends on what gin it is, how fresh it is, and then I guess also the beer that goes into it. Boulevard played around a lot with trying to do like the beer, like people were doing beer cocktails, and well, they were all decided that, what, we could just make the beer as a cocktail. So we were doing mint julep beers and Manhattan and old fashioned. They did a whole bunch of them, little real small, like handful of keg type things. And I think they played around with a gin barrel, and it got filled, and then I never saw it again, which usually means at some point somebody tasted it and didn't care for it. I dealt a bunch with doing stuff with tequila barrels, and ended up finding out that, like, I mean, I guess I never really thought about it, but if you'd asked me like, what does tequila taste like, I kind of would almost describe like margarita like flavors, because honestly, that's really the only time I drink tequila, and everything that came out of that barrel tasted like graham crackers, and makes sense. I mean, now that I know more, but so sometimes you're not going to get what you think you're going to get. I really don't know about gin barrels enough to know. Who was it? Somebody did a collaboration with St. George and got a hold of a bunch of their gin barrels. I can't remember who that was.
I'll look into it. Thanks.
Sierra Nevada. Because Sierra Nevada actually gave them a whole bunch of their one of the rye beers, and they made a whiskey out of it. And then, anyways, they've got a relationship with those, between the two of them. So, as far as processing goes, kind of like the way that we handle the process, more or less everything about making the beer, other than kind of the recipe considerations, is the same as anything else. Difference being that I crash the tank as cold as I can possibly get it. So I'll actually set the tank to below what I can normally get the beer to. My glycol system, I have it tuned to where running full bore, it won't freeze the beer in my tanks. So I'm more or less just kind of like, if I'm going to put it into barrels, have it as cold as I can get it. And then I don't put any pressure on the tanks for the most part, just maybe a pound or two. In the brewing world, we've got all of our vessels. You can most of the time add pressure to them. Pressure is always a good thing because you want carbonation normally anyways. And if the tank's pressurized, nothing can go in the tank, which is always a good thing. So it's not normal for us to like keep the pressure really low in the tank, but I do. And it's something I think about because it's not something I normally do. Do your yeast blowouts, all that kind of stuff normal. Fill via the racking cane. Fill the barrel with the racking cane. We use a vent bung. So the beer will still have some amount of carbonation. Beer in a tank, especially a tall tank, the beer near the bottom is at a high enough pressure that there's some as much as 2 volumes of CO2 in solution. And in wood, that'll usually try and come out. And so if you don't put a vent bung in, your bungs will pop out. And that's not good. You don't want popping bungs. And then once they're, the vent bungs are like an airlock style type jobby. I got a picture of them later. And so air can't go back in, but they're still not as good as a solid bung. So we always switch out to solid bungs. Age till you get the desired age flavor has been reached. And that's really kind of what you're shooting for when it comes to like the time it's going to spend in a barrel. Believe it or not, the amount of bourbon character you're going to get doesn't really, if you're doing bourbon barrels, I should say, doesn't really come from how long it sits in a barrel. That flavor develops into like that aged flavor. In extreme cases, you get to like soy sauce, balsamic, leather, real dark fruits like old figs, that kind of stuff. You can develop those flavors given enough time. That's what you're getting. Like I've super bourbony stuff has spent less than literally a cumulative less than a month in wood because it picks up all the bourbon character that it's going to really quickly. You're not getting a whole lot from extended aging. So taste it until you get that, taste it every couple of weeks until you get the bourbon character that you want. And once you're happy with that, you can go and move on to the next step. Or if you're looking for more age flavor, I would taste it at 3 months, 6, 9, 12 months, that kind of thing. If you're going for anything past 6 months, you're really starting to like detrimental to the beer, to the point where at that point, I would almost just talk to the marketing people and be like, how long do you want to say it's been sitting in wood on the label? If you want the label to say 18 months, because the last time you made that, it was 12 months, then it sits in a barrel for 18 months and you get what you get. Boulevard has never sat stuff in wood unless it was a special project for longer than 3 months. Nor have I at Fields and Ivy by myself. Rack barrel onto the bright tank using the racking cane. We push the barrels out with pressure. And so I got pictures of it, but the racking cane that we've got uses CO2 to push the beer out. I've not always done it that way. I've used pumps before. I've done just siphon style. The pushing out with CO2 was something that was shown to me by Firestone Walker. That's what they do for everything. They make parabola, so I adopted and we adopted their way of dealing with wood, getting beer out of wood. Sorry, and it's slower, but it works well. Fun thing is, it takes about 15 psi to push the beer out at any decent rate, and the barrels blow up at about 20 psi. So it's real fun. I've had barrels blow up on me. It's not violent. It's not, the heads pop off and it makes a mess, but otherwise it's just kind of an obnoxious thing when and if it happens. Don't stand in front of the heads while you're doing it. You get wet, but nobody likes a beer shower usually. And then add any adjuncts afterwards. Like I said, I'm a big fan of like processing it after it's been sitting. That really allows you to hone your flavor as well, because you don't have to worry about time dependent fall off. That's why I do it. drink a beer, because why not? Yeah. Oh, this is out of order. Anyways, so as far as like a barrel goes, there's some nomenclature that I use, just so you guys kind of have an idea of what we're talking about. Can you guys see my mouse at all?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, okay. The one that really kind of matters to us is like we've got the bunghole, the bilge. The different hoops don't really matter too much. The head is important. The crows and the chime are something that I've had to deal with a lot because it's where we get leakage the most. And then especially, and it's part and parcel with the stave ends as well. I'll talk a little bit about leakage later on in another slide, but yeah. And I'll talk a little bit about Cooper's tools. So the thing right above my head is it's called a head tool. And so normally what you would do is you take the head hoop and the quarter hoop, you pop those off. And then so the end staves splay out a little bit and the head comes out really easily. Well, getting the head back in is kind of a bit of a tricky thing. And so you can use this guy. And so if you go back and you see the guy, he's got a hoop tool there. His has got a little handle on it. And he's pulling the head up into the crows, which is it's kind of a V, well, it is a V groove that the head fits into. And then the thing there, that tool, the handle, that's I call them head bumpers, barrel tools, barrel buddy, I call them a bunch of different names. But you stick that in through the bunghole and you can use that to kind of do the same thing. You just kind of use the bunghole as your leverage point. You use that to pop the head up in. You can use these things to also pop the head out a little bit easier. But more or less, they just kind of fall out too if you're doing it. You don't always have to open up a barrel to inspect it, but if let's say you're doing like a special project in a toasted wine barrel, you want to open it up and you can use tools to scrape the red wine, the tin precipitate that forms in red wine barrels. You inspect stuff. Honestly, you could rechar stuff if you feel like it. There's a bunch of reasons why you want to pop the heads off. Then we've got the next thing you do to a barrel once you get it in is you put in a Vinny nail. So I'm gonna try and move my head out the way. If you want to read those, there's the thing that's actually from Vinny Clarizo from Russian River. I don't know if he invented this or himself, or if this is something kind of from the wine world. I don't know. Being out in Paso Robles, he might have kind of picked it up by the wine kids, but I've seen this is pretty ubiquitous for the most part. It's a sample port. We want to try and avoid more oxygen ingress than we need. And so these work really well. You just pull the nail out, a little trickle of beer comes out, and then when you're done, you pop the nail back in.
Where's the cutting board?
I don't know. Sorry, my daughter wants to know.
The boss.
No worries.
And so that's the Vinny nail. So the barrel comes in, they're usually really dirty, but like you do an inspection just to make sure that you've got what you want to have, what you think you have, that everything's in usable shape. That leftmost slide, the MO is because the barrel was made in Missouri. And so down in Springfield, we have the largest cooperage in, I don't know if it's the world, I think it might even be the world, Independent Stave. They make an enormous amount of barrels for the entire, mostly wine barrels from that location. They do have a facility that's in Tennessee as well that makes mostly bourbon barrels, but the Missouri location will do bourbon barrels as well. You can see in the middle picture there, they come in, these are trash for the distilling industry. They just need to get rid of them. And They sit in an old, they sit in a rick house for as long as it takes for them to get the product they need. It's just a unit of manufacture for them. So they're not pretty. They're not kept pretty. They look pretty rough usually. You want to do inspections like the one above my head that's got a stave that is he's a little bit out of place. Keep an eye on that guy just to make sure that he's not going to leak. That's not a guaranteed leaker by any means, but if that barrel were to leak, I would think that might be where it does. Now that is admittedly on the more towards the top of the barrel, and hydrostatic pressure isn't high on the top of the barrel as much as it's low, so that it might not leak there. They want to know about barrel aging.
Why is your head like that?
Okay, this is never mind. I'm in the middle of this.
Sorry.
Anyway, so I got these barrels from Union Horse. And the reason why I do that is because ultimately barrel freshness has more to do with the flavor outcomes more than anything else. And so I have barrel aged beer in all sorts of different barrels: Blanton's, Dickel, Willet, Brown Foreman, Beam Suntory, got High Times, just a ton of stuff, and it all tastes the same. You can't tell the difference between a Willet barrel and a Heaven Hill, Four Roses versus Maker's Mark. You just can't taste the difference, not in the beer that comes out. I put the same beer in 6 different barrels and it all tastes exactly the same. It's how fresh it is what really kind of matters the most. For a small brewery like me, buying barrels 5, 6, 10 at a time from a brokerage, I'm not really guaranteeing myself that they're going to be fresh, because who knows how long they've sat in the warehouse at the barrel broker. They might be fresh, but they might be a couple weeks old. So Union Horse being local, and then I've used J. Rieger barrels as well. Literally, I know the guys over at J. Rieger, so I call them up and I can get fresh dumps literally like that day. I have last year's Imperial Stout. Literally, they dumped the barrels at 11 o'clock, and I had beer in them by 4. So
Can I ask a quick question?
Go for it.
So freshness when it comes to if you're using a wine barrel, and have you used those, and how's that affect as far as freshness goes with wine barrels versus a liquor barrel?
So a couple of things. Wine barrels, it would be really, really, really hard to find a wine barrel for the brewing industry that's not going to be infected with all sorts of fun bugs. Wine barrels are used enough times by the vintners that they're usually pretty spent. They're pretty stripped out. Most vintners are not going to want to age a wine once and then sell the barrel off. I mean, you can make that happen, but large quantities of them are going to be harder to come by. Now, for a home brewer, it might be easier. I really don't know, but yeah, I mean, so freshness for a wine barrel. The other part too is like you really got to build the recipe right for wine. The Boulevard did that Cabernet cask thing, and they aged that stuff in a bunch, like they moved it from multiple barrels in order to make that beer happen the way that it did. Wine barrels on itself don't do a whole lot of great flavor transfer.
So as far as the wood character goes.
Well, wood and even wine character. The most beer that people are going to put into wood barrels overshadows whatever wine character you might get out of it. Now, if you did a saison in a wine barrel, it might work really great, but you're going to end up having a sour saison. And if that's what you're after, great. But if you're not, that's what you're getting. But yeah, they're so stripped out from a wood standpoint. All that lignin, anything that's close to the surface has been converted. It's funny because Boulevard had a whole bunch of third use barrels that they couldn't get rid of. And so they broke them down and I actually took the staves to some friend of mine that was doing the Kansas City Royal barbecue competition. And he used that wood from the barrels in his smoker to smoke meat. And that wood burned up like paper, like really, really fast. It's just been so stripped out that there's just nothing left. And when I say that, like it's, you know, the lignin has been, you know, converted out. It's just not really there anymore. It's just cellulose at that point.
So to go along with that, if I'm not really trying to pull out a liquor flavor, if I want, you know, wine or wood, or if I'm just wanting, you know, a combination of those two things, would I just be better off, you know, possibly just using a fresh stave that,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and then just adding the wine character in another way as well.
Yeah. If I was going to do wood aging, not necessarily a spirit barrel aging, I would probably pick cubes, spirals, chips over a barrel any day of the week. If all I'm after is wood character, that's what I would use. Barrels get you the spirit character and then the slow oxidative process that they do. Yeah, well, the nice thing is too, like, you know, if you wanted to do like wine staves, I mean, wine barrel flavor, you could probably do that safely with, you know, well, in my industry, in the brewing industry, we call them oak alternatives, or barrel alternatives. Then go back to names, but and then like I don't know, man, just adding wine to the stuff. I mean, you know, if I want my beer to taste like wine, I put wine in it. Do that with a couple different beers. You want to do things, so like with this guy here, the Union Horse. The only thing some people, this is kind of neat, you'll see this on a lot of barrels. RC53, which is the second from the bottom, that's actually the registered container, 53 gallon. So you'll see that on all sorts of barrels, RC53, RC54. If it's an American, if it's just in a bonded warehouse, it'll always say RC and a number, and that's how big the barrel is. And so like you go to like, you get Brown Forman barrels and they're all RC 55s. Well, they can fit ever so slightly bigger barrels than the in the rick house. And, you know, if you can get 10% more liquor and barrels in the same rick house, you get more production out of the same space. You want to do like finish out your inspection. You want to look at like the bung hole, make sure there's no ragged edges, that it's nice and smooth, and that when you put your bung in, it's going to be a good seal. These things will actually, like I said, they'll hold pressure. You'll pull bung and, you know, it'll either, the pressure will go in or out depending on if the barrel's either, you know, high or low. They'll hold a fair amount of pressure. It's kind of scary. This one above my head, you can see that there's a stave that doesn't quite match with the rest of the chime. That's one to look at. And then you'd want to look at the other side of the barrel, the other end, and see if that whole stave has shifted. This one hadn't. I have no idea why this one is this. So this is for the one on the left, there you can see that ISC, like I said, independent stave. And so independent stave makes a bunch of different grades of barrels. And this is their mid-grade barrel. And the reason why Union Horse picks this one is because they're put on display. Normally you would never buy one of these like high-grade barrels simply because there's no point. It's going to be in a rick house surrounded by 1,000 other barrels. What's the point of having it look fancy? Union Horse's barrels are all kind of like, they're on display. And so they want them to look nice. So these are actually sanded. So where the staves are all kind of like an even look. The barrel bands they're not galvanized, but they're not raw, rough steel. Like on a lot of barrels, it's just a band of rust by the time I ever get to them. I mean, they're solid, but like they're really, really rusty. These ones are at least blued. The ends, the heads are sanded, that sort of stuff. Makes putting the head stamp on really easy, and they look really good. Most of the time, you won't even see a nice little head stamp. Most of the barrels I come across, you know, Boulevard used to buy, you know, part of like when I say like, you know, it's hard for a small place like me to buy fresh barrels. Boulevard will buy a full truckload of dumps straight from Beam Suntory. And like literally fresh dumps that day, put them on a truck, send them to Boulevard. And so there's fresh dumps for them. Those barrels all look like they've spent, 6 years in a rick house. There's basically like a barcode and maybe a little scribble of chalk on the end, and that's about it. Most of the time, if you get a barrel from Beam Suntory that is got a head stamp on it, it was because it was at the end of a brick house row, and it's there for tourists to look at.
So what was that word you were saying when you were talking about the wine barrels being used up? It started with an L.
Oh, lignin, yeah, which is the wood is made up of like lignin and then cellulose, and lignin is the glue that holds the cellulose together, and the lignin is what has a lot of the active chemicals that we can pull out, and what kind of create a lot of the flavors.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the barrel racks. You got to put your barrels on racks. For some reason, Western Square is really the only game in town when it comes to barrel racks. You can buy used ones. Most of the time, most places like the stainless ones. I'm okay with painted ones. I don't do a whole lot of barrel aging on a huge scale, and so having these things last 5 years versus 10 years isn't really that big of a deal. These things also rust out because they're not stainless steel. Boulevard has towers of these things. They own roughly 3,000 or 4,000 of these things at this point, from all their different projects and stuff like that. I own, we got like 10, 15 of them at this point. They stack. Like I said, this one, I've stacked these things 6, 7 high before, and it's fine. They're just okay with it. Cooper's tools, and so you've got your stave driver, and then your Cooper's hammer. You can see that stave driver is got a little like a scallop shape to it, and you can see there on that leftmost or the rightmost picture. Basically how it works. If a barrel is a little on the dry side, you can drive those hoops tighter, farther in, closer in towards the bilge, and it'll tighten up the staves and keep it from leaking. Now, that's where those staves were when the barrel was made and when the barrel was last filled with liquid. So odds are, if you fill it with liquid, the wood will swell and seal up with those hoops in the same spot. But if you don't want to wait for the leaking to stop, and you just don't want it to leak in the first place, you can drive the hoops tighter. It doesn't always work, but sometimes you get lucky. So the barrel on the left is a cognac barrel that leaked really, really badly for last time I tried to fill it. And so I had to wax the hell out of it. Now you can see all of that material on there is all wax. And there's my last little puck of beeswax that I've got. And so you sit there with literally a heat gun, and you're trying to get wax to go in there. And that's how I seal my barrels, barrel wax. Other guys will use, barrel spiles, toothpicks, cattail fiber to like jam wood into cracks and stop leaks. That's a little bit more of a skill than it is just a rough chuck enough wax at it and it'll stop. So I just use wax. When you get the barrels, they come with a hard bung, a wood hard bung in them, and they're usually pounded in really tight. And so to get them out, you use a bung puller. This is kind of the normal tool that everybody uses. It works like a slide hammer, works really good. You just screw it in, whack it out, and there you go. I don't actually even own one of these. I don't do enough barrel work to justify. These things are pretty expensive. Whoever makes these things probably doesn't make that many of them. So they're pretty pricey. And I just don't have I'm not gonna buy a $300 tool to pop out, 10 bungs a year. So I just use screwdrivers.
We always did it by just shoving a Phillips head screwdriver, banging it in with a hammer between the grain structure of the bung and popping it out in halves.
Yeah, that's what I always did. The racking cane that I have is called it's the Barrel Bulldog. GW Kent sells it. You can see here on the left, it's got a little spike tip that digs into the bottom of the barrel, and so it stays put whenever you put it in. You kind of don't even have to really jab. You just kind of set it down in and it stays. You can flip that thing around and it's a soft nib, so it won't jab in the bottom of barrels. I don't know who uses those. You fill the barrel till it kind of comes out, and then you go in with your breathing bung. And so, like I said, beer is a little bit carbonated. You want to let it blow off, and that's what we use these guys. You sanitize them before you put them on. Whack them in, spray the barrel down with a little bit of KMS, and then potassium metabisulfite spray, and then that's it. And then a couple days later, you go on to a solid bung, whack that guy in, and you're good to age it as long as you need it to age. When you're going to take the beer out, I use, like I said, the GW Kent Barrel Bulldog. It's a Racketeer is the fancier thing that some people have. I've used the Racketeer before. It's a nice piece of kit, but it's like, I joke, guys, $1,800. This thing from GW Kent's like $400, and I don't do enough barrel work to justify a Racketeer, so I bought the knockoff. But this thing works just fine. You can see that conical rubber stopper is tapered just like a bung, and so you put that guy down in like that, and there's the bottommost wheel tightens the bung, and then you can pressurize the thing. You can see here I've got the CO2 line on there on that one on the left, and then you pressurize the barrel really gently. I use as little pressure as I need to get the beer to move. It usually takes about 30 minutes a barrel. You can go faster, but I don't really want barrels to pop. You can see this stack of barrels here that's my head's in front of. This barrel right here, that's one that blew up on me. You can see that's not a head. I've got a hunk of stave in there supporting the whole structure, but that's a barrel that blew up. So beer didn't even go everywhere. I just kind of poured out. The head just kind of fell off. And then when you're done, you can sulfur your barrels. If you're going to reuse them, there's a couple things you can do. You can fill them up with a citric acid, potassium metabisulfite, or solution, and let them sit. I've done that before. It works really well. It's basically like barrel pickle. I don't know. It keeps bugs from growing in the barrels. Real bugs, mold, bacteria, anything. And then, or you can do this guy. So this is a sulfur burner. So this is the bung. The wood part sits in the bung hole. The metal part goes down in, and you put one of these little sulfur donuts in there, and it will fill the barrel with sulfur dioxide, which pretty much kills anything that might be in the barrel. This is real common in the wine world, not that common in the beer world. We use barrels a lot quicker and not as many times. So sulfuring a barrel isn't that big of a deal. If you've got wine barrels that you were using over and over and over again because you're doing like mixed culture, I could see sulfuring barrels every now and again to kind of control whatever culture you've got. I think that's it. And now I open the floor for questions, comments, and concerns.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. I actually have a few questions,
Sure.
and I'm not going to steal everybody. I'm sure other people have some too. But you mentioned earlier that generally 6+ months is detrimental, or can be detrimental to the beer as far as aging longer in the barrel. In that scenario, if you have like a high ABV beer, 14% or 12%, and you want it to age longer, but you don't want it to be detrimental, are you transferring it from the barrel to another vessel, or are you waiting in another vessel prior to putting it in the barrel, in that kind of scenario?
Oh man. Well, it depends on what you're trying to get out of why you're aging it. Is it harsh flavors that you're trying to mellow? Is it you want a lot of barrel character? There's a lot of answers to that question depending on what you want. So let's say that you've got something that's 13% and it's hot and you're like, I need to do something with this thing to calm this down. You can stick it in a barrel for as long as you want to get to have that heat go away, but you're also going to end up with some oxidized character as well. Let's say it takes a year or more. You're going to end up with, something that's mellower, but also has some, depending on the base malt, some soy sauce or leather or tobacco character to it. If I had something that was really hot, needed to sit for a bit, but I also wanted to spend time in wood, I'd do both. Yeah, age it in stainless and also do as much barrel aging as you needed to get to where you want it. But yeah, I was at, I did side project when they did Beer Barrel Time this year, and that beer on the menu talks about it's been sitting in wood for anywhere from 2 to 4 years. I'll be honest, I thought that stuff tasted like tobacco leather soy sauce. Not even the slightest bit enjoyable. I mean, if that's what that beer is supposed to taste like, it's fantastic. But like, I'm thinking, oh, this is a stout. And to me, it was just like, this tastes really, really old. Now, well done age. It is like, it's very good. It's very clean soy sauce, balsamic, leather, tobacco. But their label gets to say it's sat in a barrel for 2 to 4 years. And that's cooler than it tasting good. It's a bold statement, I know, but yeah, Fields and Ivy in their side project, but it's whatever. Yeah.
That's awesome. The other thing that I was kind of curious on is how many times do you reuse a barrel? So you put a beer in, you get your 6 months. How long before you're not really getting what you want from that barrel anymore? Could you do multiple beers over a barrel program, like a barrel aging program or something? Or are you trying to kind of change those out fairly quickly?
When I was at Boulevard, Bourbon Barrel Quad was a mix of bourbon barrel aged beer and then fresh beer. And depending on the barrel and everything, it would either be like 30% barrel aged, or it would be like 60% second use barrels, or 100% first use, or 100% third use barrels. And they would all generally taste about the same. So like no one could pick out, oh, this is the 100% tasted against the 30% first use barrels or the 60% second use barrels. So like the whole orders of magnitude less flavor per use of a barrel. Boulevard stopped completely using third use barrels because there was really no point to it. Second use, you're getting, okay, so like as an example, we did a beer, Rich SOBs was a double barrel beer, but they were all second or third use barrels that I switched. So I went from a second use barrel and then put that in a third use barrel to try and get as much barrel character out. And I got as much barrel character out of that than I got out of like a single first use run. Am I making any sense? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get it. I've seen some like homebrew clubs or whatever who've got a barrel aging program. They've been using the same barrel for like 6 years or something. And so I was just curious, like, if that's overkill, or like if you can actually pull that off, or what. So, but yeah, it makes
I mean,
sense.
you're not. It's not so much time as much as it's just how many barrels or how many beers have gone through there, solubilized what they can, and then gotten out. Um, part of the problem too with like not getting fresh barrels is if you've got to rehydrate that barrel, and the only way to do it sometimes is you fill the barrel with water. Well, you're stripping stuff out too. That water coming out of there starts to taste barely, and that's flavor. So it's part of the reason why I try to avoid anything but the freshest barrels. Well, a bunch of reasons. Yeah.
Does anyone else have some questions? Because I can keep going, but I'll let someone else get in there. So
Yeah, I've got a question for you. So have you tried aging beer on any other types of wood other than oak?
Yeah, so we did. Corey, the owner of Fields and Ivy, has got this farm down in Wellsville. That's where we grow all the grain and all that stuff too. But every now and again, he'll chop down trees or clear area for more farmland, and he'll bring me interesting woods. So we've done cherry, walnut, maple, cedar, and they all do different fun things. The cherry wood is by far my favorite. If I could figure out how to get a barrel made out of cherry wood, I don't think that wood is porous, so I don't know how well it would work from a slow controlled oxidative environment like oak does, but it's a neat wood, man. You wouldn't think it, but like the beer takes on this like almost, well, it's a cherry sweetness. It's wild what cherry does. Walnut's neat. It kind of ends up making the beer taste a little bit like walnut sawdust, which if you like, it's great. I hesitate to do stuff. There's a lot of woods that are very allergenic, and walnut is one of them. And so I didn't want to put that out in the market because, like, what if somebody's allergic to walnut sawdust and they don't know it, and my beer makes them go into anaphylactic shock because, who knows? You always see that warning for stuff like walnut. Maple was cool, but maple is neat, sugary, maple-like in some ways. Dumb as it sounds, simplistic, but it's what it was. That book, that wooden beer book, the Buchart book, he's got some stuff in there. Talks about some really neat barrels, African hardwoods, and some really neat stuff. The guys up, I think it's Anchorage Brewing Company, the really fancy pants brewery up in Alaska, has a whole bunch of different exotic woods. Cigar City has got some exotic wood. I don't know if they're barrels or fooders. Acacia was a really common wood for not really providing much in the way of flavor, but being really good wood for a vessel and just in general. Yeah, really neat stuff. Yeah, I really enjoy, experimenting with that kind of stuff.
How was the cedar that you tried, and do you know what variety it was?
Cedar there's a lot of species of cedar, and so found that like aromatic cedar, like cedar that you'd make like a blanket chest out of, is a little too strong. But you can just find some kind of like generic red cedar, works really, really well. And so Boulevard played around with that. If you guys remember See You Later Doppelbock, that was aged on a whole boatload of cedar. Literally, we sat in the cellar with planes, old school planes with cedar boards, and made cedar chips for like 6 hours. Just so we could have this wood with a bunch of surface area to age this Doppelbock on. Really good. I really like it. Cedar is neat. Cedar works really well with IPAs, believe it or not. I think Matt's onto something with like extracting botanicals from different places with gin, but cedar is something I've played around with. I know Cigar City does a whole bunch of stuff with cedar for their their cigar box series, and I don't know exactly what version of cedar they use, but it's whatever cedar is normally found in like cigar boxes and humidors and stuff like that. I don't know if it's an aromatic or if which specific species it is, but all of those beers that I've had from them have been really good. Like I said, IPAs. It's one of the woods that works really well with lighter beers.
So for us home brewers, how would you recommend incorporating like local cherry or cedar or whatever it might be?
So literally what I did, like Corey brought me in just literally a cedar log, and I just took a hatchet to it and hacked it apart. You want it to be kind of, you want surface area, so you don't want like nice, clean, shaved staves. Those do exist as like oak alternatives for like wood aging, but the reason why they're like a nice little flat stick is because it's a known quantity and it has a very linear curve of what you're going to get out of it. But if you're just trying to look like wood flavor, surface area is a good thing. So I just kind of wanted a whole bunch of, cracks and crevices and stuff like that. And so I just try and split it as rough as I could. For the cherry, actually, I know that I think about this, I remember this too. I blowtorch the outside of it, kind of not char it, but like toast it. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, just stuff. As weird as it sounds, man, you got to be worried about like adulterants. So like, I would not go to Rockler and just buy any old wood that they've got there.
I've also read, I don't know for sure. I've also read some varieties of cedar are poisonous. So if anybody's thinking about that, be careful.
Yeah.
I've got standing cherry and all of those out at our farm. It maybe as a club thing, it might be kind of fun to get a log of one or two and season it, and then maybe have some fun with it next year or something.
I did it with a barley wine. I thought it was fantastic. That was actually supposed to be as a special one-off keg for a bar that was supposed to tap it in April of 2020. And I still don't know what happened to that keg or beer. I have no idea.
Somebody had a good time.
I don't even remember what bar it was. My brain kind of got scrambled in those first few months with what happened at Fields and Ivy. So I kind of lost track of it completely.
I think that covers all the main questions that I'm aware of.
Oh, one more.
One more.
Yeah, and then I'll let you get off here, Dan. I'm sorry.
No, I enjoy this immensely. You have really.
Okay, so then I have two more. I've read a little bit about it, but I don't necessarily know how important it is. I just kind of curious how often, as a preventative maintenance kind of deal, do you wax the barrel? Is that something where you really only worry about that if you have an active leak, or do you periodically, wax the entire thing, or what's your thought on that?
No, waxing is just a leak thing. No, and Yeah, just at fill, and if you see it and it's like it's a dribble, it'll seal up in a couple hours. I'll leave it alone. If it's a little like it's a spray dribble, I'll sit there and rub wax on it until it stops. Those cognac barrels leaked bad enough that like even rubbing them wouldn't do anything, and so that's then you get out the heat gun and you melt it in, and then that works. But I prefer beeswax. There's a couple companies that make like it's not as hard as beeswax, and you kind of press it in, and that works too. I think
Okay.
that stuff. Yeah.
In an absolute pinch, if you're like desperate, you can even go to your hardware store and find a 100% beeswax toilet bowl ring. The kind of wax rings you set your toilet seat on when you're putting in a new toilet. They're 100% beeswax, so they're good for that, and they're super cheap, and it's just good to keep one on hand if you have barrels.
Yeah. I
Cool.
buy enough honey that I actually just ask my honey people for some wax. That's where I get it. But honestly, otherwise I'd probably do the same thing. Just go and get a toilet bowl ring.
So final question, and then we'll get on to the tasting because we've got four beers to drink, I guess. Would it be possible for us to like piggyback off you sometime? If I've been toying the idea with doing a barrel aging program here within the club if there's enough interest. And so, getting a fresh barrel, I think would be, really important for that. And I don't know how possible that is just generally for like a homebrew club. So if we could piggyback off you, if that's something that's possible, that'd be awesome. But I don't propose either. So
I buy barrels in about October-ish. So that's when you could. I mean, they would be second use barrels, but actually one of the barrels in this slide is actually empty. And I'd give it to you guys if you wanted it. I've also got some 25-gallon barrels as well. But I gave one as well. The other thing too is like, oh gosh, Amagoni Vineyards. There's that urban winery in like the West Bottoms. He's selling used wine barrels right now. He wants $200 for them. Wine barrels are usually the wood's way thicker. I've actually seen wine barrels fall from like a 6-foot height and they bounce. It's insane. The whiskey barrels just fall apart. Wine barrels are really built like tanks. He's selling wine barrels. As a homebrew club, I could probably give you the email of the guy that runs Rieger, and any day that they're doing a dump, he'd sell you one for 120. That's what he charges me. I don't see why he wouldn't.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we got a couple options. That's really
that used barrel company in Lincoln. They've got Midwest Barrel has got a lot of stuff. That, like I said, buying one barrel is, you might be able to make sure it's fresh, but just be careful if freshness is really what you're shooting for. Bill, you guys talk about Bill, the guy from the homebrew supply shop. He actually works my bottle line for me. He works on my bottle line. And I gave him a 25-gallon barrel just because I had one around and needed to get rid of it. So like I said, if you guys want a 25-gallon barrel, it's a second use, but it will be a second use for you. You can have, I got 12 of them. You can have 10 or 11.
Well, the fun thing about that would be is that you'd get more people able to put in a 5-gallon batch.
Yeah.
Into a 25. Five brewers could get together one day and brew into it, and if we had more than one, then we could do more brewers getting the chance to do this, because that's usually what it comes down to, is you only have a finite number of people who can get in on it. So people feel left out. That way we wouldn't have to.
We could have a club project with our grain.
Sounds like a great idea.
And I will say, I mean, the barrel that you're looking at here, like I said, it's emptied, rinsed. It would be second use, but when you pull the bung on it, it's still really bourbony. I mean, there's stuff there. You know.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure Josh or Jake will follow up on that with you in the future. So I think, Josh, do you have anything else?
I was just going to say thanks a lot, Dan, for coming, talking to us. Awesome information, great knowledge. You're welcome to stick around for the tasting. I know I wasn't able to get you a 4-pack of it, but you can hang out with us while we do that, or if you need to get to some things, feel free to hop off as well. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna go put my kid to bed. Actually.
Round of applause for Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, now we are moving on to our tasting with Ryan and Josh. Right?
That is right. All right. Frank, if you go ahead and click to the next slide here, we are going to be going through some member brewed winter warmers this evening. We did taste some winter warmers at the November meeting. Let's see, one of them was the Nutcracker. The other one I remember us doing was the Breckenridge. But here, as it says, the vital stats, they do vary wildly. This is a pretty broad category, 30C. So there's some general rules like ABV is generally above 6. There's some commercial examples. Don't think any of them are available near us except for maybe the Harpoon. Or the Goose Island, I guess, too. But go ahead and click the next slide there, Frank. And actually, if you wouldn't mind just clicking to beer number 1 real quick, we're going to crack it and then circle back to this slide. I'm making it complicated. So if you have your beer number 1 handy, if you'd go ahead and pop that open, if you haven't already, feel free to get digging in on that. That one has been cleverly titled, How the Graph Stole Christmas. It is half and half apple juice, fermented, and a Belgian dark, and hence the graph here. If you were unfamiliar with that term, that is when you do a cider and a beer blend. We have here the malt schedule. I'm not going to read all these items out. The hops, and then the other are our adjuncts that have been added in as it shows here during boil still, so these were not post-fermentation adds. Feel free to add in the chat what you think about this one. We're going to circle back to this slide, but let you get drinking it. Like I said, see what you're perceiving off of it. Chat us up in the chat. And Frank, if you wouldn't mind going back to that second category slide with appearance and aroma. So it definitely smells very appley to me. All right, well, the winter warmer category here includes a lot of things, as I've said. It's a very broad category. It is generally darker kind of a beer, either an amber to a dark brown. There is some hazes or opaqueness out there, but most of them are fairly clear. Otherwise, as it says here, the aroma should have a combination of aromatics that suggest holiday season. So if you get cookie spices, malts, different things that kind of say it's Christmas time. Josh, do you have anything to add in on appearance or aroma so far, or on beer number 1?
I mean, with you, I agree I get the apple probably first. I almost have like kind of a dark cherry thing a little bit, and I don't know if that's from the half like Belgian dark, if that's where I'm picking that up or
Can
what.
you go back to that slide?
Let's see, does Frank still have that up? Can't get my slides back up. I just lost it.
That slide, I'm assuming you mean the slide that had the beer fermentables on it,
Yeah,
because
lots of slides.
there's 33 of those, that slide.
Dale, do you want to point out a particular note on this one for now?
Yeah, so in my quest of simplifying my brewing process, it worked out really well to make a half beer, 2.5 gallon beer on stovetop, and then mix that with chilled apple juice to chill it. I was really aiming for on the fermentables to try to get, you can see the higher level bonds. I wanted to get some of that raisiny note going if I could, and some of the dark toffees and that kind of thing. A little bit of wheat to help with the head, though I noticed the head is non-existent on mine anyway. Spices, I intended to spice it a second time, but I just was paranoid about over being heavy-handed with it. So I kind of like the very mild spice that might be coming through. I maybe get a little bit of that. I don't know that I'd want a whole lot more. So anyway.
Yeah, I was wondering when you said the head was a little low. I couldn't tell if that was my bottle or just the general sense of the beer.
Well, so I charged it in the keg, and I thought we'd be meeting in person. So I just thought, well, I'll just take the keg to the meeting. But Josh generously kegged it for me the other night, and so I don't know if it was charged enough in the keg to start with or what. But anyway, it is a little bit flat.
Yeah, we had to pivot to bottling pretty fast there. And thanks to everybody who brewed for pivoting so quick with us, because we obviously found out on a very tight timeline. All right, so we've talked about appearance, and how's everybody doing on beer number one? Do you have room in your taster glasses to start into number two? I wouldn't mind keeping the train rolling. I see some thumbs up out there, so I'm gonna finish real quick, and we'll start beer two, and then we'll circle back where Frank just was to the style note.
What was the ABV on beer one?
Good question. I'm seeing if I can find that note quick about the final gravity.
It's very drinkable. So when it's goes down smooth, you want to know.
I think that it was by the time I did the blend in the fermenter, it was something like about 1060, or rather, about 1063, I think, if I recall correctly. And then it dried down to work down to about 1010 or so, 1012.
So not too big.
No, it's not too big, and
not like this next one.
Yeah, this looks like a man's beer coming up here.
Yeah, I see your numbers there in your note, Dale. It was 1058 originally to 1010 approximately. So standard range. Just gave number two a open there. Somebody else did too. Apparently, it sounds like. This one has a moderate head to it. All right, so number two, let's see. Josh, you want to go ahead and talk about this one? Give us some intro.
Sure. So this is not a spiced winter warmer. I am not a big fan of spiced beers in general. But it still kind of follows a little bit of what a winter warmer is, since that's such a loosely based category. I kind of threw a lot of things in here. Had some leftover malts, like just four ounces of like the two different crystals or whatever. So just using that stuff up. But the interesting part was really I kind of experimented with the Voss Kvike yeast. I've heard and read things how you can push a beer with like a teaspoon of the Kvike, ferment it out, and it would still kind of go crazy. It's an OG of 1090, so looking like a 9.5% beer. I was a little hesitant for a teaspoon, so I went with a tablespoon. I pitched it at 95 degrees, and within 3 hours, that thing was rocking like crazy, just on a tablespoon of dry yeast. It's just nuts. And by day 3, or probably even by day 2, completely fermented out, and was finished. Let it set for another 10 days, kind of at ambient temps, and then kegged it up.
Yeah, your story about the Kvik was impressively fast there with that.
I mean, I was kind of thinking, a lot of things I've read when you push Kvike, and I think Voss in particular, and maybe that's Hornindal, and maybe that's why I didn't get that, was that you would get like some orangey flavors from the yeast, from stress in the yeast. And so then, that would give me the spice instead of adding an actual spice to the beer. I think one thing that the couple others that have picked up on it, that tasted it earlier, was kind of like a grape Kool-Aid or something from the yeast, maybe like a light grape.
Yeah, it looks like there's been some people talking about it in the chat here. So that's interesting. I'll catch up on that here in a little bit. Thanks, Frank, for flipping back to our slide there. So we're back on talking the style in general, and I do have a picture of LBC's Clark there. Figured I'd pick a Lawrence beer for our example pictures. Again, this category is broad. You look here, body is all the way from medium to full. That's a pretty large chunk of the range. Carbonation, moderately low to moderately high. That's like a binary set of all carbonation levels. I mean, these are very broad stroke notes on the BJCP for this. And people are in the chat talking about alcohol warmth. I believe a couple people said there. John Pepin mentioned alcohol, and I swear somebody else did, but maybe that's the only one. I guess Lee there agreed. Talk about this well-aged warming alcohol content without being overly hot, so it shouldn't, have that booze burn. Let's see. And again, flavor just as broad, many interpretations possible. Brewer creativity, and we are seeing a broad range of brewer creativity here, and that's why I left it intentionally open. We picked a pretty broad category, and people did some broad strokes with it. So spices and optional fermentables, we've seen different ones in all these ones, but they should match the base beer style. And we've seen this here, that Dale's graph had cinnamon as a big component to it, and everybody kind of pairs apple cinnamon in their head. And that kind of stuff. We'll get to a couple more here in a bit, so I won't jump ahead there with the other adjuncts. We're talking about rich, malty, malt-based flavors. Well, we've seen Dale had those medium high Lovibond. He was trying to, that was his goal, was to pull those malt-based flavors. Josh had several complex malts, despite being kind of an IPA themed. I don't want to say themed. But like there's a lot of hop and the Kvik thing and stuff. But he's got the medium SRM malts too for the same reasons. Let's see, chewy. That's interesting. I like the descriptor there in the chat. Frank, you want to go ahead and hit our next slide? And everyone, feel free to keep putting your interpretations in the. Oh, did we go backwards one, Frank? I guess we did jump flavor to mouthfeel, and I read. Never mind. We're circling backwards now in the slide order. So I think we've covered all of them then, because we did appearance, aroma, flavor, and mouthfeel. So after talking about all these, let's just go to the beer number 2 page here. With some of the comments people are giving, Josh, any other things you want to note about some of the aspects of your beer here?
No, I'm feeling pretty good with what people are picking up on. I mean, I think chewy is a good description. I was going for pretty hoppy winter warmer, or I wouldn't even say it's more of a strong, probably American strong or something like that. But yeah, I like chewy. It's a cool description.
And I'm half distracted for a moment there earlier, but did you have a particular aspect in mind when you made that or were designing this beer when we said winter warmer? Was there a theme you were going for?
I don't necessarily think I had a theme. So one of the beers this is kind of loosely based off of, or what I kind of tried to maybe to replicate to a certain degree was like brown sugar from Lagunitas. Which they tend to put a lot of hops in everything that they do. So, or yeah, unrefined sugar is the new one this year, which I don't know if that's the same recipe or not, but so yeah, loosely based around that, which I don't even know if they consider that a winter warmer. It comes out like around November, I think. So it's clearly a winter warmer, but
yeah, I think the unrefined this year was they used like cane sugar or something.
And they're listing unrefined under a barley wine for what it's worth. Well, then now they say strong ale on the label, so it says a winter warming holidays barley wine, but then on the label it says strong ale brewed with whole cane sugar.
So that might be in two interpretations. So the BA, when they do like at GABF, when they do the professional BA awards, they use slightly different style guidelines sometimes than BJCP. Okay. And then some people will flow towards the styles that Untapped has, which is mostly BJCP as far as I know. But like they might adjust things to fit the Untapped marketing thing. So what the label says versus what it is could be a different thing sometimes, depending on what you're looking for. Cicerone has its own set of style characteristics that are slightly different from BJCP also.
When did the brown sugar go in? The boil or second later?
In the boil. I'm pretty sure that was like 45-minute addition.
All right, we're gonna keep drinking Josh's beer, but Frank, if we could back up to Dale's slide, I'm gonna put Dale on the spot again. Same kind of question to Josh. You talked about that your part of your beer was you wanted to fit on the stovetop, so that's why you kind of thought of doing a graph. But overall, your concept of the beer here, what was your, like I see the cinnamon and apple and the Belgian stuff. So I mean, is this apple pie in a beer? Where were you? Where are you getting your inspiration?
No, like Josh, I didn't really have a driving thing in mind. I kind of knew what a graph would sort of taste like. And, with winter warmers, I think we all kind of have our own thought of what that is. I've always kind of considered a winter warmer as having a little bit of a spice note going on. I guess maybe as an inspiration a little bit, as I'm always a big fan of like mulled wines and those hot wintry drinks you'd have with cider, spice cider, and that kind of thing. So I guess if any inspiration, it was that a little bit, but knowing the apple is coming through, what plays with apple, allspice, cinnamon, cloves, and all that kind of stuff is to go along with the darker malts. I don't know that. I guess I don't really have a good answer on that. It just trying to play with the apple note and see what I come up with.
Okay. It's a good beer, and definitely the apple note is very forward. It's very apple forward, and then you get to taste the malt on the back end.
I think if I could have changed anything, I probably would have, tasting this now, probably make the apple element maybe 30%.
Okay.
Something like that, just to back it off a little bit.
And I wonder too, just if it had longer, if it was less green of a beer, if the apple starts to disappear or the malt comes out better, just age what it'll be like if you save a bottle for a few more months.
Usually the ciders I've been making lately, and I've talked with Chuck about this some, but using just apple juice, they usually burn down to pretty close to zero on gravity. And so I wasn't really expecting that much apple flavor to come through, but maybe the sweet malts have pulled the apple flavor aroma up. Because normally you wouldn't get hardly any apple on the ciders using that yeast and everything.
Oh. All right.
Just
I don't know.
just as a side note on that, I've fooled around for the last couple of years with cider kits, and for some reason the cider kits don't ferment out completely. They still leave a lot of apple flavor, and I don't know how they do that or why they do that. But if you're looking to try to add a little bit more of that apple character, some of the kits you can get from the brew shops really allow that apple flavor to stay in flavor. It doesn't ferment out completely.
Well, and not to sidetrack this on cider talk, but yeah, I think Homebrew Pro Shop, I was talking with those guys, Tara and everybody, and they back sweeten their ciders with apple juice or concentrate. And so most of my ciders, I try to back flavor with other things. So again, the base cider typically is very dry, very clean. It's like it's ready to be flavored in some way. So that's why it surprised me that this apple came through on this one.
All right, I don't know about everybody else, but my taster number 2 has run empty. So I'm going to recommend, if you haven't already moved to 3, now's a fabulous time to move to number 3, which is, oh, Josh just stepped away. I'm not sure if this is Jubilate or we were 1 T short of Jubilate. I'm going to guess Jubilate, but I know he knows that answer.
Yep. So it's Jubilate. Don't necessarily know 100% why it's Jubilate. It is based off of Jubilale. So that's where the name comes from. This is brewed. I don't think he's here, unfortunately, but it's brewed by my brother-in-law Timothy Moreland. So we had a joint brew day that day. We were both brewing at the same time. He had his propane set up out on the patio outside, and I had my electric setup going down here. So we were kind of bouncing back and forth. But yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, I don't see Tim here, so we'll have to hit him up later about his beer. But
yep.
It's also it had a little bit of a moderate head, but I think Josh here's definitely had the most so far we've seen.
The one interesting note I do know is that he's actually been, and I've never harvested yeast at all or tried to reuse yeast. I've never top cropped. It's something I kind of want to do, but he has I don't know what they're called. It's a plastic conical speedle maybe or something like that, a speedle fermenter. And it's got the ball that you can kind of harvest yeast with. And so he has early on been harvesting yeast and reusing it. And I think this is actually the third use of the Lallemand Kveik. So I don't know how many times you can reuse it. I imagine, you can go as far as you want, but I don't know how long until it gets detrimental. So that is one interesting note of his beer.
I think that contraption is I think it's called fast ferment. It's the plastic conical with the bottom attachment. Spiedel is typically just the round barrel shaped with the orange lids and a little spigot on the bottom. But I think it's called fast ferment or some such thing like that. I don't know if we got a giveaway for it one year. Was it? Maybe somebody did a competition. I think it was a competition prize, or we've had such things at a giveaway. But yeah, it's the plastic conicals. They come in 5.5 gallons up to like 15.5 gallons, I think. And they have the attachments for yeast capture at the bottom, as well as some blow off and some other stuff to kind of make it like what big breweries have in their full-size conical setups in a small plastic home version. The problem with them is there's no stand, it's a cone. So I don't know if he has like the floor stand, but they have like wall stands for them and everything. You can just set them into. It's pretty neat.
So he actually got his from a guy, a member of the club. I don't know who he was, but he had posted on our forums or whatever. He was getting rid of like all of the stuff he was moving. So that's pretty much Timothy's entire setup came from that guy for super cheap. I think he gave him like $30 for the fast ferment, and that's what it was the fast ferment. He has the wall adapter or whatever, so it hangs from his wall in his garage. Yeah, they're pretty neat.
Yeah, those fast ferments, I swear I've seen someone else have them, but it's a very cool product. So that's why I was going to.
What's interesting?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was reading this slide and I was about to ask you more info on the harvested, and you went right in on it. So that was about the number one question I had for this, other than he pitched at 90, but other than the jacket, did he like have any heat on it, or did he just leave it in his normal fermentation space and it slowly cooled throughout the fermentation?
Yep. So yeah, he doesn't have any kind of a fermentation control. I don't think he even has a jacket. So he pitched at 90, and it's actually stored in his garage, so it's not even as insulated as well, as the house or whatever. So I don't know what his actual ambient was. I think it's, we shot for 68 as the ambient. So I don't know how quickly it dropped, but I'm guessing, I think his took off in like 2 hours with that harvested yeast. So it probably kept up with that fermentation temperature for a little bit. But yeah, he wasn't able to hold the temperature or anything like that.
So if his garage is like mine, it's garage lagering season. I don't even have to put a cooler on it. Just being in the garage, it's well below lagering temp in there.
One interesting note, I think, is that his recipe and his hop additions actually are higher IBUs than the previous beer. So I'm not sure if we're picking up as much bitterness in this one versus the previous one, the number 2. I mean, it's definitely there and it's definitely hoppy. It just interesting how the different hops affect it.
Yeah, we've seen, people are getting some good comments here in the chat. We're seeing toasty a couple times. I saw tobacco, leather nose, some hazy, nice brown head, nutty, would go well with something nutty. Yeah, pairing. Roasty notes, get that hop bitterness. Some umami, that's nice, yeah. And then Jake says that number 2 was hoppy, but number 3 definitely has more bitterness. And now I wish I had 2 tasters so I could sit here and side by side on that note. Like, all right, now you're making me jog my memory. All right, I'm still working on number 3, but did we have any? Let's see, Tim was on, so we don't have his. You said his inspiration was Jubile, so we have that answer. Dale said his was stovetop. Josh, yours is an electric setup?
Yep. Yeah, electric setup.
And then what's Tim got? Is he gas burner?
He's got a propane gas burner, like a little turkey fryer or whatever.
Okay. Give me 1 second to go grab beer number 4. I didn't have the segue I did with beer 2 to 3 to go grab number 4, so give me just a sec to go grab it. But I'm seeing some more comments come in. Feel free to put your comments here in the chat with what you're thinking about number 4. And then I know we've got a couple people who brewed number 4 here, so we'll let them talk about it here in a minute.
I just want to question how accomplished of a homebrewer Ryan is if he doesn't have enough tasters just randomly sitting around his house. I did at some point a couple years ago. I did a beer glassware count and of about 250 individual pieces of beer glassware, and Barry has showed off some of his tasters on his desk, and I know there's people that have way more of those things, just probably in boxes than I have in possession. But it tends to be, I guess, a hobby. It's the merit badges of the hobby. Is that the kind of the way we do it? We collect beer glasses from festivals and our own events and.
Well, and Ryan's been giving out taster glasses at the last few events.
Yeah, like one of my taster glasses literally houses by Metcalf. Like his mom did a whole like taster glass, and one of them I used tonight was from that. So
You're
I'm
not
using
wrong. I
them for
don't have
plant
a.
propagation because I have so many.
It's not that I don't have a lot. It's I'm also having to share the bottles down the hall. If you see Jenna Leah there on one of the other cameras, that I'm walking some beers down the hall, so I'm having to like ping pong the bottles back and forth. But I got number 4 here, and I'm getting ready to crack it. But we have another Kavik brew here, so that's number 3, right? I guess all but number 1 have been on Kavik yeast. This one has nice, clean, short malt bill and about average hop bill compared to the other ones we saw.
It is missing one malt in there, I think. It's supposed to have a 1/4 pound of midnight wheat on that.
Tell me about the background, Angelo.
That is, the best brewer at Yankee Tank Brewing right there. He's just taking a little nap. He was a little tired. And he's just hanging out, man. You never know what that guy wants to do,
I thought that was the crime scene photo of when you killed him. Then I saw him in the other window, so I'm gonna let you off the hook.
No, man, he's still
No, he's
around.
not-
He just
He's not dead.
that was after he
have
did all the work
lots of
that I didn't want to do.
questions.
That's just a hardworking brewer in his natural habitat right there.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would say by far the number 4 is the worst beer so far.
It sucks.
It's so bad, Angelo.
All right. Well, while we have the sassy brewers of this beer on the line here, we'll pull Lee into this mess too. And you want to talk about where you got the idea for this beer and tell us about that speculous spice?
Okay, so this brew, it's based on Jamil Zainashev's Winter Warmer. I mean, in the brewing classic styles, which I hope everyone owns because it's a great book.
Obviously.
And we just kind of, we figured out what hops we had laying around, so we just kind of used those, just basically because that's what we had. But the idea was to create a beer kind of based on the speculous cookie, which is a Dutch cookie. Basically, it's just a spice cookie from Europe, like the windmill cookie. If you'll see them around, they have like a little stamp on them. It looks like a windmill. So that's what it's kind of based on. And it's basically just like a holiday spices. And a lot of these cookies have a little almond on them as well, and they also have a little bit of orange is kind of included in this. So a pretty simple grain bill, and then we hit it with Michelle's did some research and came up with the spice blend, which if anybody would like later, we could throw out there. But it does include a little bit of fresh.
We lost Angelo.
We lost, yeah, I'm about to say.
There was
Angelo, did you actually just turn into a robot right there?
I think he did.
Wait, how about now? Do you have me now?
We can hear you now.
Hey man, you try to call me?
Okay. Anyway, I don't know what you heard last, but yeah, so we Michelle came up with her spice blend. We used that right at the end of the boil. And it had a little bit of orange peel in it, which is kind of cool, which isn't, definitely a holiday thing. We pitched it with the Voskavik at approximately 90 degrees. And then we wrapped it up in some insulation over at Lee's, and we just threw it in her closet. And so I have no idea what it fermented at, but I imagine it ripped through quickly because we didn't even check on it for another week or 10 days or something at least. And I was really happy with the attenuation we got. It's an 8.6% beer. And then after the fermentation, of course, keg and carb. And then I kind of just dosed out a little bit of almond extract, in a glass and just kind of scale it up and toss that in the keg. And that's pretty much it. And Michelle likes it. So that's good.
It's actually, and this is a good thing, it's actually a little bit sweeter than I would expect for like your 1016 finish, as high as that gravity was. But I'm digging it. And that could be the spices, I don't know. But there's so much going on, man. I love it. It's good.
Yeah, no, I think it's got a nice complexity to it that makes it fun. And that, I mean, I've known we have a lot of the Voss Kvik beers, but if you're like need to make a big beer really quick, and especially if you have, I mean, they ferment, fairly clean anyway, but the minute you add like a bunch of hops or make it a really like spice beer or something else, then you almost don't even have to care. It's fermenting so fast and clean enough that like if you're trying to, highlight some spice or some other fruit or something else with a malt, that stuff still comes through, especially in a big beer like that, which is with Kvik, I like to put it on a big OG beer, man. It just likes that big fat malt bills and 1060, 1070, 1080. I'd like to someday take like a 120 original gravity beer just to see what the hell Kvik would do with that. It'd probably destroy it, which would be
I
really
know. I think it'd be
fun.
fine. I mean, if a tablespoon can hit 1090 in 3 hours, man, like a whole packet, like one single packet in a 5 gallon of 120, I'm sure it'd be fine.
Let's do a teaspoon.
Let's do it.
What I do love about this tasting is that none of us like collaborated that we were going to use the same yeast, and we all ended up using, except for Dell. I think Dell used something a little bit different, but 3 of the beers were Voss Kvik from Lallemand, right, or Lawbrew. So that's cool.
Yeah, I'm becoming a believer of Kvik, but I use SO5. I did the math. I thought I had enough time to do it, and it did work. But yeah, your words on big beers with the Kvik yeast, that's going to solve a lot of mysteries for me.
Yeah, the one thing I've ran into, and I ran into this recently, is I was doing gluten-free beer over at the brewery in a 5-gallon batch, and I don't know if it was a nutrient thing because it was still a big beer with sorghum extract. I didn't hit it with nutrient like I usually do. It was kind of an open ferment though, just foil on top of the carboy, and it was Horrendal, and it stalled pretty hard. So I had to go back with the Lawbrew Voss afterward, and it finished out just fine. It tastes okay right now. But I think I would definitely be, if you're using the Kviks that hot, make sure you oxygenate, make sure you throw some nutrition in there as well. And I would try to like move to the bigger beers. And even if you want to make something lighter, maybe make make a 5-gallon batch of 8% beer. If you wanted to have a session, then, blend it down later with some water or whatever you have, because it really needs that nutrient, I think, and all the like big fat wort to like really, that's what it's been trained to do over all this time, and so that's what it wants, I think.
I know a lot of you have been using Kvik for a while, but this was my first time using it, and I was amazed how quickly and violently it took off. It's something to see.
And I'll tell you another good use for Kvik, and I keep that Voss in my fridge all the time. Should you get a beer that stalls, like this summer, I had one that stalled on me for the first time in like ages, and I had a packet of that in the fridge. I pulled the fermenter out of the fridge and set it in my garage, which was like 80 degrees, threw the packet of Voss on there, and it was down to a final gravity in 2 days. So it's a nice thing to keep around.
All right, we can keep talking, but I'm at least going to quick run to the last slide. Everybody's already talked through this process, but here officially are our brewers for the evening. Thanks everyone for brewing for this meeting. Yes, the muted round of applause there, everybody. Thank you. And let's see, I'll quick turn it over to Lynette. And like I said, after we finish the meeting up here, because it's already 9, once we finish it up formally, we can all keep running on about all these beers and stuff. So, but just in the interest of time, I'm going to put a pause.
Well, I think this was a good meeting. Thank you for everyone who participated and popped in, and we'll keep talking and see you all later.
And congrats to all the new officers, and thanks Lynette and our current batch of folks for putting in this last year plus.
Yes, that too.
You should. All I wanna eat is them barbecue chips. All I want is someone just to try to protect us. You can try, but you never wanna try to defect us. Funny, where I'm from. Mama, baby, always a bum. All I wanna do is stand in this line. All I wanna pick is your nose, honey, high. Sweet little corn, you gotta be hot. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. Honey, where I'm from. Mama, baby, boy's a bum. Honey, where I'm from. Hallelujah, I'm a bum. Baby boy bum. Baby boy bum. Baby boy bum. All I wanna do is drink beer for breakfast. Whiskey River, take my mind.